Hello and welcome to our March Circles Big Night. We are so glad that you are here. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to comment or ask questions that way, and I will work to see if we can get those answered. On Google Meet, also feel free to use the comments and we'll get to what we're able to. So Circles has two goals. Number one is to help people leave poverty behind. And so we work directly with individuals. We call them circle leaders, and they are working really hard to work through and out of poverty. And we are honored to have some of our leaders tonight and to continue to journey with them. So that's the first goal of Circles, is to help people leave poverty behind. And the second goal of Circles is to remove the barriers that keep people in poverty. So as we continue to journey with those who are working their way through and out of poverty, at the same time, we want to look at the systemic issues that are keeping lots of people in poverty and making it hard for so many to leave that behind. So Big View is how we work, one of the ways that we work towards goal number 2, to remove the barriers that keep people in poverty. Tonight, we are blessed to have Deb Moses join us. She is on the Circles Big View team and just brings amazing wisdom and experience. She is a CSA farmer and is passionate about growing things and building a stronger community. Deb, we are just thrilled that you are with us tonight. She is going to share about the true cost of childcare. So without further ado, we'll invite Deb to share with all of us. Thanks for being here, Deb.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm thrilled to be here and to talk with you tonight about the true cost of childcare and how childcare, or the lack thereof, impacts people and their ability to get a job, to hold a job, or to be able to work their way out of poverty. Can you hear me okay? Is that all good? Make sure I can move my screen here. There we go. So tonight we're going to talk about an issue that affects us all. Oftentimes it's thought of childcare as a problem mostly just for parents, but this is really an issue that affects our whole community, and we'll talk about how that's true tonight. So we're going to shed some light on this issue and also empathize with the people that this is most impacted, people that are most impacted by this, and also importantly ponder some solutions together. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Deb Moses. I have been blessed with a farm here about 12 miles west of Sauk City. And I've also been able to work in a program called Farm to Early Care and Education, or Farm to Childcare. And this is a program that works with childcare providers to help provide fresh local foods for children, and especially education and just fun hands-on activities around food and gardening and all those fun things. And I also have a son, Quinn, who is 9 years old now, but I had my own childcare journey of finding childcare, figuring out how to pay for it, and also really growing in incredible respect for early childhood educators. I admit that I'm one of the people that kind of thought that childcare was just sort of glorified babysitting, and I couldn't be more wrong about that. And we'll talk about that this evening as well. So the challenges of finding affordable, quality childcare. Of course, parents can't really work outside of the home without childcare, and as we're finding out in the pandemic, it's even hard to work at home with children present. But the high cost is one of the really big barriers. And this is data from Sauk County, and this is from a one-time survey of, I believe, some data from November of 2020, looking at family childcare programs and group childcare programs. And there's these two different types. Family programs are ones that are usually run out of somebody's home, and they have up to 8 children, and usually of varying ages. And the cost is usually a little bit less. So for a full-time position, you can get childcare for around $155. And then for group centers, which have larger, anywhere from 9 kids up to 200 or more in some places, they're more available, of course, in more bigger cities and towns. And they're also a little bit more expensive, around $175. This is kind of an average middle of the road. It's also more expensive for younger children because for infants and toddlers, for example, you need to have you can only have 4 children per 1 teacher. So it's more expensive just because those ratios, and understandably you wouldn't want to have to take care of more than four babies at a time and still be able to really do a good job. So this is the average cost per week for full-time childcare. Now, if you factor in minimum wage, so if you have, say, a young mother, maybe doesn't have a lot of experience or training and gets a minimum wage job, that's about $7.25 an hour. And that's going to be about $290 a week. So your gross wages after paying for childcare in a typical week are around $135, $115. So you're looking at around $500 a month after you've paid for childcare. And this, of course, for full-time means usually around 8 hours of childcare. So if you take into account that you have to drive to your job and drive back from your job and have a lunch break and that sort of thing, it can be really hard to squeeze in your childcare time and all of that. Of course, and then on top of that, there's yearly enrollment fees, most are around $75, and also late charges. If you're late getting to pick up your child, maybe your boss wanted to talk to you about something, maybe a customer had a problem, maybe you got stuck behind a train. If you don't get there in time, there can be late charges for not getting there. So that increases a lot of stress around drop-off and pickup times. There's not always a lot of flexibility either. It's great if you can find a job that's mostly during the week, somewhere between 8 and 5. But we'll look again at, for Sauk County, this is based on a survey and have everyone participate that has child care programs in the county, but this is about a 70% return rate, representing 31 programs for families and 20 for group, and the capacity around 240 for family and around 1,000 for group. And of those programs, only 2 family programs and 1 group program provide evening care. So that would be between 6 in the evening to midnight. None of them provide overnight care. So if you had a 2nd or 3rd shift job, if you're bartending, anything that takes you late into the night, there's really little options as far as formal programs. And weekend care, there are a few family programs that do that, but no group programs that do weekend care. So again, any kind of job that isn't more of a standard Monday through Friday desk job is going to be tricky to find childcare for. And then there's also extra charges if you have to bring them a little bit earlier in the morning or they stay a little bit later. And then you often pay like a lump sum for a month, per se, and that covers all of those days. And if your child is sick, you still pay for it. And it's understandable for the small business owners that are childcare providers that they need to be able to rely on a certain amount of income. But it is really hard for parents who don't have sick leave or vacation time. If your child is sick and you stay home and you don't work, you don't get that in your paycheck, and you've also already paid for childcare for those days. So that adds, again, extra stress on the situation. And of course, the waiting list. It's a little hard to see in this graph, but again, this isn't representative of all centers, but on average, in the month of March, this current month, there's a little over openings for 1.4 children across the centers that responded to the survey. And for infants and toddlers, those first 2 bars, there's room for 0.3 infants right now. So that's going to be a little tough to swing, but the demand is really high, and especially for those really young children. So why is there a lack of childcare also? Aside from the high pay, well, it's really challenging work. You're doing really hard physical labor, picking children up, rocking them, changing diapers, and also mentally keeping track of all the children, all of their individual needs, their emotions, helping manage relationships. It's a really intense job, and there's really low pay. A lot of educators, early childhood educators, only make minimum wage. So many early childhood educators qualify for government programs because despite the really amazing work they're doing, they don't make very much money. And of course, this leads to a lack of qualified teachers when there's not a lot of motivation to take these jobs, even if people love this work. Not a lot of benefits, and Quick Trip has benefits and better pay, and so people choose those jobs instead, but they, even if they really love childcare. Childcare programs are also highly regulated, and this can be a good thing. If you send your child to a licensed childcare center, you can know that there's certain checks in place for a safe environment and teachers who are well educated and qualified. But a lot of programs are not licensed, and that's partly because there's a lot of burden that comes with those regulations. And people avoid that because they don't want people coming to their home and checking things, or they just can't keep up with all the regulations. So, but it's a little scarier for parents that don't know for sure that their children are really in a safe place. So because of all these reasons, a lot of programs have closed in the last decade. Up to 7% of the group centers have closed, and up to 70% of the family childcare chairs have closed. And this is important because family programs are often more flexible, like those more variable hours. They're also tend to be in areas where there's shortages of larger childcare programs. So in rural areas, in low income areas, there tend to be more of these small family programs, and 70% of those have closed in the state over the last decade. So that's a huge impact, especially on struggling communities. So why is quality childcare so important? Well, I love this image because it really helps explain it really well. So this is symbolizing the synapses in our brain. So the wiring that's going on in our brains as we develop. And around the age of 6 months to 2 years, the synapses that are forming in our brains our brains are like almost on fire. Like it's just so much energy and so many connections are happening at those years. And it's when we are wired for how we feel about other people, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our relationships and safety. All those things are getting wired during those ages. And then as you get a little older, 4 years to 6 years, the connections that aren't being made are being pruned. And so it's really important during those early years that we help children feel secure and loved and stimulated and setting them up for learning in the future. And so it's really, really important years. Childcare can also really help families. I know that I'm a better parent because of what I learned from the teachers that my son had, and just helping me understand development, helping me understand that he's having tantrums because look at his brain at 2 years. There's just so much going on there. It's hard to handle it all. So really helped me understand my child's development, and also help me understand what he's like when I'm not around and how he's in relationship with other children, and connecting me with other families to feel support and to feel that I'm not alone in this crazy adventure called parenting. So it affects our economy by essentially making sort of a phantom workforce. And what this means is that we know that our local businesses are really hurting for labor. They really need workers, and there's workers out there, but they can't leave home because they have their children to care for, and there's not a lot of options, especially for anything that's a little more variable. Without being able to work, of course, a lot of people are more reliant on government programs because they're just caught between a rock and a hard place. And without more people working, it affects our tax base from that money not being spent, and also from just not having as much stimulus in the economy, or from taxes from the wages that are earned also. And of course, in post-COVID, if we really want our bars and restaurants and our factories and everything to be up and fully functioning, we really need to have the workers, and we need those childcare programs in place to be able to help that be possible. So our last big view presentation was about the cliff effect, and this brings that back into this presentation here. This is a graphic from Nebraska, so it's not exactly our numbers, but it shows that each time you get a raise, or each time you start making a little bit more money, you also lose benefits that you might have already had. So somewhere around $11 an hour, you could lose childcare subsidies. So in Wisconsin, we do have a program called Wisconsin Shares that helps provide subsidies for childcare if low-income parents would like to work. But once you make a certain amount of money, you lose that subsidy. So, and it's a quick cliff. It's not like a gradual decline. So this is really scary and really defeats a lot of the purpose of going back to work if you can't have some help to make it worth your time spent at work. And I got a little bit of local testimony from Shelley Nickel, and I'll just read it for you. It has a really good summary of a lot of these issues and shows how it's really affecting our community here. She says, as an employee and now co-owner of By Leaps and Bounds Childcare for almost 17 years, I can say that childcare in the Sauk Prairie area has never been so hard to find. I have families on our wait list before they're even pregnant. Our next infant opening will not be until February 2022, no foreseeable openings for 1- and 2-year-olds, and our 3- and 4-year-olds in preschool room are already full for the September 2021 school year. I also have a file folder full of families just praying to get in before their children go to kindergarten. What keeps me up at night is I do not have a good answer to give these families when they are desperate for childcare and want to return to work. When families are desperate, they make desperate decisions, and quality in childcare may be overlooked just to get someplace to watch their children. My biggest problem, especially now with COVID, is finding quality teachers who love what they do. Childcare is more than a job. It will be the hardest job you've ever done, but also the most rewarding and self-fulfilling job you have ever done. Again, that's from Shelley Nickel. So the consequences of ignoring this problem in our community are pretty big. High stress on families, not being able to work, just even the logistics of getting your child out the door and to their childcare program and to work and rushing back and getting them and getting home and still wondering if you're going to be able to pay the bills is a lot of stress. And in Wisconsin, Adams County represents one of the highest rates of child abuse. It has about 3 times the number of incidents as the state as a whole. And it also has the fewest number of childcare options and some of the highest levels of poverty. And really difficult things happen when families are under a lot of stress. There's nothing evil about anybody. They are under extreme stress, and it comes out in ways that aren't good. We also have high stress for our local businesses and economy. Parents are really distracted when they don't feel like their children are in safe places. If they have a lot of issues with their childcare program, they need to leave work early or address them, and so it just causes a lot of stress in the workplace too. And a lot of stress on women too. Childcare is a concern for all of us, but it often falls on the women, and especially single parents, 80% of whom are women. So it's disproportionately affecting certain people. So fewer people are having children, and people don't have children in one of 2 ways. They either prevent pregnancies or they end pregnancies. And this is a really difficult thing to even bring up, but it's something I feel that we need to think about. There's incredible pressure and stress, and we really need to address these problems, to support families, to support women, to really be there for our fellow community members. Now that I've laid that really dire picture out, I want to talk about some solutions that are out there. Some things are working towards being better. The government can play a role. Wisconsin Share, as I mentioned, is the child's care subsidy in the state. There's also the Head Start program. There's a program in Sauk City, Baraboo, and Reedsburg, and that's available for low-income families. Unfortunately, it sounds like they don't always get the number of people they could because people make just a little bit too much money, and they're not able to use those free childcare services. There's talk of teacher loan forgiveness. It's not official yet, but there's some talk of having loan forgiveness for early childhood educators to kind of reward them for devoting their lives to this really important work. And then Wisconsin's actually done a great job with using the CARES Act funding to support childcare programs that would have closed otherwise. So they are still here as an option for people. And then the latest relief just included a lot for childcare tax credits, and again, more money to help programs and to help with the subsidies. For industry solutions, companies are starting to buy their own childcare programs, or buying slots in programs so that they can attract workers and show that there will be an option for childcare if they take a job there. And other community solutions include childcare cooperatives among families helping each other out, especially on those evenings and weekends and other odd times. And I think one of the greatest things we could do as a community is to show support and understanding and respect for parents and caregivers and teachers. And all of us parents know that we're probably all doing something wrong. We know we're doing something wrong. And to be able to see someone struggling in a store with their children and say, parenting's really hard, you're doing a great job. Even things like that really can help, just help us feel less alone. And I think that's a real key solution that we can do on an individual level. So with that, we have some discussion questions to think about. How do we help parents and caregivers feel and be less alone in their struggles? What can we do at a local level to support childcare providers? What are other possible business, government, or policy solutions? And how do we educate people about the importance of this issue and how it affects every single one of us? So I think Sarah is going to set us up into breakout groups, and we can take some time to reflect on this and come up with some solutions and things together as a community. Thank you.
Yeah. Deb, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate that, and your experience as well. So yes, we are creating some breakout rooms, and so you'll be assigned to one. This screen does not go into the breakout rooms. So those of you who are on Google Meet, if you just want to kind of jot down the gist of each of these questions so that you can discuss them, that would be great. We'll leave it up on the screen for a little bit here so you can do that. If you are on Facebook and YouTube, we would encourage you to comment or type in questions there, and we can engage that way. We will come back at the end to discuss. So just take a note of which number group you are in so that we can hear highlights from each group when we do come back. And if you're willing to have someone in your group take notes, that would be a huge gift for us. If you're able to share with us or email those thoughts or ideas, we'd love to collect those and continue this conversation. So again, we'll be heading into breakouts, and then you'll discuss these questions. We'll have about 8 to 10 minutes in the breakout, and then we will come back in the large group and share from there. So talking about parents and caregivers to feel less alone, what we can do locally to support childcare providers, what are other business, government, or policy solutions, and then how can we educate people about the importance of this issue and how it affects us all. So we will head into breakouts. You should get something on your screen that has you heading to one if you just say yes, or you accept, or whichever way that goes, and we will discuss there. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back in a few minutes. So Caitlin and Capri, if you want to unmute, then you could be a part of the conversation that's happening and in the dining room.
Or the leaders that, oh, here comes John. Hey, John.
Hey there, John.
Wonderful.
Is it just two of us in this breakout, or will there be more people joining us? Okay. Okay.
I think it looked like one of them was on mobile. So. Not really. I guess I was going to ask, Jim, with being an ally, are there anything that the circle leaders have mentioned, or is it not something that they have to deal with?
Yeah, so right now, one of them has a mother who's there in their home, lives in their home full time, and so she typically watches the kids when they need childcare. Although Caitlin, who is the wife of our circle group, is thinking about getting a different job so she can be home more hours to help take care of her kids as well. But they don't use childcare. I don't think at all actually for anything. So
I know my older sister lives in the Sauk area, and she's had, trouble trying to find a place that works for their hours and is nearby and convenient and stuff. COVID's kind of thrown a wrench into all of that too for them. But I guess, like at a broader level, I thought that the childcare co-op idea sounded kind of interesting.
what? How does that work?
Like if there'd be 3 families that all have a kid or two, and they provide childcare for the others when they're at work. So,
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
in the beginning, when my oldest daughter was born, we did pay for childcare, and it was really expensive.
Yeah,
So we got lucky.
yeah. Well, that's very cool that you have family. Hi, Capri.
Hi.
I guess the other thing too that I was wondering, I didn't know if 6-8, as far as a solution, I didn't know if 6-8 would ever be interested in doing some kind of co-op daycare or whatever. I don't know. Has anyone ever talked to Sarah or John? Or John, are you there? Being an observer, you don't want to. Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not a small undertaking, but I also called you, John, to see if there's any way we could have like a tiny bit more discussion time, but I don't know. But
10 minutes.
yeah, it was like 8 or 10 minutes when Sarah mentioned it, so it was just. Okay, yeah, that's as long as we have a little more just overall time to discuss, that'd be great. Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
So Caitlin and Capri, do you guys, I mean, I realize this is kind of a weird question, but like, the idea of stress, do you feel comfortable with your childcare situation? I know it's a family member, but so that's kind of weird to answer that, but I mean.
Well, should we go on? Uh-oh, John,
Sure.
coming on board.
Now we'll get some good ideas.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had like a half an idea for the next one.
Oh, good.
And how it would exactly work, I'm not sure, but back in the day when I worked at Maplewood, we had like the senior class, board, what I'm looking for a word now, but the kids that get elected like class president and council,
Oh, yeah.
that's the word, would come in, and as part of their work for the council was to put in so many volunteer hours. And I'm wondering if that could not be, I don't want to say manipulated, but turned into something that these kids could use for projects at school, just to come in and help volunteer for a couple hours on the weekend, or,
Right.
just, to, it's not a paid position, but still they're working towards something.
Well, maybe even like the National Honor Society, kids are always looking for something.
Exactly, right, yeah.
So maybe something like that. They could maybe design projects or fun things for kids or whatever.
Right, just come in and if you have an overflow of kids, have them, have some there every day. I'm not sure how their school days are structured so that they would be able to come like in an afternoon, like the leaps and bounds, or whatever.
Well, I mean, someone could come after school, and if from like 3 to 5 and read to the kids or something, give the people at leaps and bounds a little break, or somebody a break.
Right,
just
these two could probably work together, these two problems,
Right.
Help take the stress off.
Go
Like
outside.
a lot of kids are looking for volunteer hours, so.
What about, we do things in the villages, like we honor the firefighters or we honor the whatever. Could we do something like honor caregivers? Could they get something from Culver's, or, just to recognize them as being essential to our community?
Even if I don't know who would, and there again, I don't know who would run this, but our local paper,
My parents have joked that they were far away, but they kind of joke about being glad that they were far away because they didn't want to spend their whole retirement taking care of their kids. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of sad, but yeah, it's a tough balance, and it's really great when you can have that support system, for sure, and someone you really trust and can feel good about. I mean, I know the first time I handed my 5-month-old off to the childcare providers and walked away out the door, it's just like, oh my gosh, like I've only met these people one other time, and now I've just given them my baby, so it's a scary thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the first week wrecks your nerves real bad.
Yep. And as trust builds, that helps, but it takes time. It's a crazy thing giving your kid to somebody else.
Deb said she has a 9-year-old. How old are your kids, Caitlin and Capri?
So we have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a huge, it would be a huge expense if you had to pay the daycare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially since daycare is what, like $500 a week or something like that per kid.
Yeah, it's like outrageous amount.
That's unheard of.
Well, yeah. Deb was giving the presentation tonight, and she said, I think in Sauk County, it's like what, 161 or something on average, 160. But yeah, times 4. That's crazy.
Sometimes
when we did it when we did our childcare, it was in Dane County, and Dane County is way higher.
And we opted to take our daughter to a very, very expensive daycare. And even though the state was paying a nice portion of it, it was still really expensive.
Yeah, it's a big portion of your income. Yeah, I mean,
it's almost like, should I even work? Is this even worth it?
Yep.
Just working to take care of the kids, having somebody watch the kids.
Yeah. What do you guys think for local solutions? I mean, obviously your relatives have helped out, but Deb, your son goes to school, but he is there sometimes and not sometimes now with COVID, I suppose. Huh?
Yeah, and we're lucky that we've been able to work from home, and in the summer I have my farm, and so he can be here, and in theory he helps, but doesn't always happen. But it's a more flexible situation than if I had to be going somewhere else, especially if I was driving into Madison or somewhere else for work. I'm not sure what we would do. I don't know if we'd be able to be out here. So
yeah, it's yeah, I don't know what I always think that there's such a shortage of workers right now that it seems like employers would be encouraged.
So we're going to bring everybody back to the main session. Welcome back. Thank you for engaging in those discussions. We are excited to have everybody back together. So there were three, plus those who are here in the building, and we would love to from each group. So if you want to kind of choose one of the questions, and if someone would be willing to share answering one of the questions, that would be great. I don't know if anyone from group one, I don't know which group you were in, but thanks, Jim.
Oh, I was going to volunteer Lauren, actually. No, Lauren had the idea. So she had, I thought what was a really, really good idea, which was the concept of maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 4 families getting together and co-oping childcare services so that they would each sort of take turns. Possibly different times, different days, but just finding a way to find a group of parents to find not only to support each other through the process, but also to provide those services. And I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Awesome.
I think she had mentioned that in the presentation, but I know I've had coworkers in the past too that have done like a nanny share, where between a couple of families they're able to hire one nanny, so they're still getting very personal attention. It can help with transportation costs too, because maybe they're hosting at their house 1 week out of every 2 or 3 weeks, and so just the more you can kind of share and create your own private stuff, it can be very costly, but add some extra flexibility for parents.
Yeah, and I don't know if Capri, would you be willing to share your idea too?
Yeah, so I had the idea to maybe there was there's a bunch of businesses, they could pick a child care facility that they choose to fund, and they can make that an option for their employees to go there, so that their employees can have a place to have childcare if need so, if need be, and if not, then at least they're still giving back to the community and making this option available to people who need it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So the ideas of a childcare co-op, kind of taking turns or sharing a nanny between multiple families or businesses, kind of creating that childcare opportunity. Those are 3 fantastic ideas. Are there other ideas, possible solutions for business or government or policy that anyone talked about?
Well, we were thinking of, I'm sorry. we were thinking in our group about maybe just that there could be some childcare options given to like the National Honor Society. Some kids that could volunteer to read with those in childcare. Maybe play with them outside, give them a break a little bit. So they would be earning some needed volunteer hours, and it would really help the health of the childcare situation. We also thought about, you know, we have special days for honoring firefighters and other people. Could we not have a day to kind of celebrate our caregivers? You know, maybe there's something that we could do that makes that even more visually appreciated part of our community. Maybe article in the newspaper occasionally on the programs that are available, and maybe a person who is employed there could talk about why they appreciate doing the job so much, something like that. We were also, with the first one, there were the three of us no longer have young children, so we kind of went along like, how could we encourage caregivers or whatever. And one thing I had done, there was a home care, and I went over like once a week, and sometimes I you know, swept floors and did dishes and whatever, but it just gave a little bit of a break and a little bit of encouragement. The other idea we thought of was encouraging parents. That came up, I think, in Deb's talk about the importance of when we recognize things that they so often feel, I think, that they are doing things wrong, or, you know, it's just like, just seems like I failed here, and oh, I lost my patience, whatever. So just that, speaking to that, of that they're doing a fine job, but also complimenting in the sense of noticing the examples and being really specific. Now, when you handled that situation like that, that was just perfect. You know, it was so appropriate, and that was so honoring to your kids, and yet, you know, whatever. So those are just some things we came up with. Linda, did you want to talk about the legislative piece, or?
Okay, it had, going back in my own work history, at one point Maplewood was talking about providing childcare to employees. And everyone was excited about it, extremely excited. And I'm not quite sure why it didn't get followed through on. But you know, my first thought is to, because it would be something that would be financially not bad for business, but they'd have to put money into it. Because I'm wondering if we couldn't suggest to our lawmakers and stuff to maybe offer some kind of a tax that if they provided childcare stuff, just to make it a win-win situation for both sides. It would help with the transportation part, getting to and from work. You probably wouldn't have this, you know, paying $1 a minute if you're late. It's, you know, just, it's a long shot that would take a long time coming, though. It's not going to be an immediate.
Well, yeah, to jump onto that, I know that there's some situations where you were talking about Maplewood, where there's elderly people. There are some daycare places I know about that are in conjunction with an elderly place, so that there's some contact, and the elderly people can see the kids too. It's such a cool idea. Yeah, and I realize, I think any business, because I think that there are so many that are short workers, would be a good investment.
Right. It would be a win-win situation, because they're going to get people who can be there, and they won't be losing their workforce to stay home for mom to, or dad to stay home with a sick child. You know, there could be different, I don't know. It's a very futuristic idea, but.
I like it, Linda.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I specifically said, when John was on our call, I said, well, what about 6-8? You know, could you be a site for a co-op. Just an idea.
Yeah, if you want to head that up, we could look into that.
You don't have enough things on your plate, do you, Sarah?
Well, no, I mean, if somebody was passionate about it, and I mean, that would be something that we could definitely look into. We've talked about it and had ideas, but just needing the passion and the people. So,
Yep.
Lauren, you have something else to share?
Well, I was just going to add, I know some businesses can offer like a flex account, and you think of it as like health insurance costs, but they do have them available for dependent care, which would include childcare. So maybe even if a business isn't able to fully fund it, if they're able to offer that, it at least gets you paying with pre-tax money to go towards your daycare expenses instead of post-tax, which for most people is 10 or 20% different. And that might be something much more accessible for businesses than trying to take on a whole program or subsidizing the whole cost, or even if they just subsidize part of the cost. But I know that flex is something they can just offer, and the employees fund it themselves a lot of the time.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. That's something that we can, go to the businesses with, and that either they're adding to that account or even just making that account available could make a significant difference for families. Awesome. Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Has there been any discussion with Tawana German being the chamber head of the Chamber of Commerce? Has anyone had any conversation with her about a role she could play in attracting businesses or helping businesses out by somehow getting involved with helping with daycare?
Yeah, John and Chad Harnish presented to the chamber group Get Moving this past month, and childcare was a huge thing that the businesses are talking about and bringing things up, and so hopefully that conversation can continue.
Great.
That way. Yeah. Deb, did you have anything to add in closing before I wrap us up?
Sure. Just I love the idea of having like honor students come teach. I think it'd be great to just have more exposure of, especially high school students and older students, like to just the early care world and what it involves and some of the joy around it, and also appreciating what that kind of work means. And my last sort of summary comment is that I love to especially remind legislators or company presidents, like anybody like that's high and mighty, that none of us would have gotten anywhere unless someone wiped our bottoms and fed us and paid attention to us and loved us and read us books. Nobody would make it past those first couple of years. And so we really have to remember that solid foundation, because no matter how wonderful you are and how high and mighty you are, we all had very humble beginnings, and we owe it to mostly women caregivers for the high and lofty things that we accomplished. So I appreciate everyone being here tonight, and I love the ideas. I love the thoughts, and hope to encourage more of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. It's just so true. So we are, again, just so grateful that you all have been here with us tonight. We do this Big View the third Monday of every other month. So May will be our next one. You can see past Big Views and upcoming info on our website, which is makingservicepersonal.org, and under the Circles tab, Big View. And if you have a passion for this specific issue or other issues, systemic issues that are keeping folks in poverty, we'd love for you to reach out to us. We're wanting to put together teams that can really take what happens at these Big View nights and help to implement them or encourage them in our community as we're talking about these different issues. So if that's you, if you're like, I want to do that, please reach out to us through our website or email, Facebook, however you want to, would be great. All right. So that's all we have for tonight. Again, we'll be back with another Big View in May, and we are so grateful that you are here. If you are a part of the Circles program, if you want to just stay on the call for a couple more minutes, we'll finish up with announcements. But thank you everyone else for being here.